Welcome one and all to episode 6 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Nick and Blaze. This week we'll do the rundown of round 3, the highs and lows. There was a lot of injuries this week, which is a little troublesome for the league. Lightning stopping play at the MCG on an Easter Monday spectacular. We also do a rundown of Gather Round that's coming up this week. And any MRO findings from people being very, very naughty on the field. So let's get into it. How are you doing, Mr. Psyrick?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just come back from my Easter celebrations myself. Not to gloat too much on the podcast, bit of a volleyball champion, absolutely dominating my cousins.
Very good, very good.
Racked up 3 victories. So, yeah, feeling like a bit of a winner, even if my team didn't quite get up over the weekend. Still got to find those things to be good about, feel good about. So, yeah, it's all right.
Oh yeah, fair enough. I did all my family celebrations after the footy yesterday.
Oh, nice.
As well as our traditional Good Friday stuff. So that was all very nice to do. And yeah, otherwise it's just been a pretty chillax weekend.
Yep.
It's good to enjoy 4 days off, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always hard because sometimes it feels busiest on the Sunday and Monday when you'd rather have that relaxing bit. But I mean, 4 days off is just good in anyone's book. So
absolutely. Shall we start with Thursday night footy? With the grand final rematch. That wasn't really a grand final rematch.
Grand final at the opposite end of the ladder. A possible tank bowl. A mean tank bowl. It wasn't really, but 2 languishing sides at the start of the season, Brisbane and Collingwood.
Well, it was a night. It was a night for Tom Mitchell, at least on his 200th. He pretty much starred the entire game. Like, he pulled 24 touches at 96% efficiency, 7 strong tackles from him, and 5 clearances.
Yep.
Not to mention, getting the win, because the scoreline was 10-12-72 to 14-8-92. You gotta... strong game from Tom Mitchell.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't quite watch the performance. And I must admit, I didn't even get a chance for the highlights. I was too busy ranting and raving on my own team. I forgot to look at the highlights for this game. But from what I could gather, it seemed like Brisbane were fairly inefficient moving the ball forward. And Collingwood just sort of, from what I heard, did what they needed to. Like, it wasn't the cleanest game ever, but there was a lot more synergistically than the last few games have been.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think their midfield was a lot better this week. I thought moving Nick Dacos back to half back was the one of the moves that they really needed to make, because he looks so much better on half back. And not to mention, like, their forwards actually kick goals. Like, they were pretty accurate for the most part. Like, Jamie Elliott kicked 4 goals. Hill kicked 3-1, Myercheck 3-1, McCreary 2-2.
McCreary was the only multiple behind kicker.
Yes.
To put it that way, yeah.
But for the most part, they were consistent, and that's kind of what Collingwood have been needing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as I said, it's not like everything quite failed in the forward line previously. Again, we'll get to a team where I will pick apart the... that has, but it's still that Collingwood forward line pressure as well.
They had more tackles inside forward 50, or more pressure acts inside forward 50.
Yeah, they just had 30 more tackles, full stop. So as I said, it's is that when you get a bad team, you can always focus on some of the negatives. And as I said, it's one game. It's their first game for the season. Win for the season. So they'll exactly. But yeah, as I said, at the very least, they got a bit of their identity back. They got a bit of pressure, and I think just the first step to getting on. Because they'll need at least a couple of good runs to make finals. Starting from so behind. Like, I'm not saying they're not going to, but you know what I mean. At this point, like, they're probably gonna. And they're more than capable of, getting runs of maybe 3 or 4 wins in a row. as the fixture opens up for them. So yeah, as I said, so this match, which pretty big one, away for Collingwood, you know, it puts them on track for that.
Right, that's twice that Brisbane has lost at their home ground so far this
Yeah,
year,
well, that's going
considering
to
it
be the
was
interesting thing.
considering they
Yeah.
were dominant last season.
Well, I think yes, it as like I'm still ruling out Collingwood from top four just because I think it's a bit too hard from here. Especially if they get a few injuries or something. It's hard to maintain that um, you know, that effort. But as I said, it could happen. It would just need like single losses here
Mhm.
and there from here on out. But Brisbane probably joined that now, like especially two games at the Gabba, against the tough opposition. Like, you generally want a couple, of wins there. So even though they were against two quality oppositions, oh, I'm pretty sure Carlton are quality. I don't
They're
know
a
if
lot
they're going
better
to be
than
upper
Collingwood so far
echelon,
this
but
season.
well, yes, but yeah, as I said, yeah, it's just going to be a bit of a uphill from there.
Yep, I agree. I want to highlight two players for Brisbane and one for the
Mhm.
Pies, but I'll start with the Brisbane players. Lachie Neale, as per usual,
Oh,
he's
yeah,
getting 35 touches, 20 of them contested possessions, 8 score involvements, kicking 1-1 himself, and 10 clearances. He was just doing what he has always been intended to do in that midfield. Is just be a
yeah,
bull, be a clearance master, and whilst, sometimes it's not enough, it doesn't always get them to wins, it shows that at least he's able to lead by an example.
yeah, for sure. And especially when Brisbane, as I said, like in the previews, they're running almost their entire thing through offensive dominance, and that starts in the middle. So for Brisbane to be successful, a lot of it relies on them, winning that disposals.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they still did, 356 to 319. Um, but yeah, as I said, it hasn't quite been as, oh, I don't want to say effective, but it definitely hasn't been quite
I
as
think I think it was
ruthless.
mostly just the inaccuracies in front of goal that kind of let them down the most.
Yeah, like yeah, obviously Charlie Cameron kicking one goal free, Link McCarthy one goal two.
Yeah,
Um, but as I said, I was just taking like in more general, like even going back to the Fremantle and the Carlton game, like you don't want to say toothless lines because I'll be as bad as every newspaper on the back page after a Lions loss, but it does feel a bit less. Yeah, it's not quite the same sting as what they were able to produce out of the middle last year from what we've seen. So, um, but yeah, as I said, Lachie Neale having a really good match. Yeah, it
yeah.
just.
I want to highlight Oscar McInerney as well, who I thought matched up really well
Mhm.
against Mason Cox and Dusty Cameron. I think he's still one of the better rucks in the league. Obviously, I think Max Gawn still is probably the best ruck in the league at this
Yeah,
present point. But it shows that, as long as he doesn't get injured, they still have a really solid core in the middle.
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I thought he was a bit poor the last couple of weeks, especially against Fremantle. But
I thought he was
yeah,
a
as I
lot better
said,
this week, at least.
yeah, exactly. And as I said, he's a very important player for them, and he's very handy. Like even up forward, like he doesn't look like a forward threat, but it's just, you know, he's got smarts about him.
Hmm.
He knows when to just tap the ball forward to a crummer or try and pick it up yourself. He's not as clumsy, say, as some of the others, even though he looks kind of gangly. I don't know. You could say that about any ruckman though, but
And then I've
uh,
got one
yeah.
more player to shout out, and it's probably the most important player to shout out, and it's coast to coast legend Billy Frampton with
Oh,
14
Big
spoils across
Billy!
halfback. He
Woo!
certainly saved Collingwood's defense a lot of the time
Mm.
this week.
Haha. And I must admit, I'm looking at the stats. He's so good. 15 possessions, 11 by foot. In defense on Frampton. He was so good, he's played on himself.
Oh my
Uh,
god, actual legend.
he's the only one that can stop him. But yeah, I'm assuming he just took someone like I'm guessing he either went on Danaher or one
Yeah,
of the
that's
big
what I
two.
think it looks like.
It's not like either had a big game, so I'll just assume that he won.
No, but I mean, 14
Or hit.
spoils is still a lot. Shows how many
Yeah.
contests he was involved in.
Well, I said they absolutely smashed the tolls. Like Danaher, 1 goal, not many possessions. Hipwood, 8 possessions all up. They just got nothing going up forward.
Mm.
So I don't know which one he was on, but definitely either of those two.
Definitely
Like,
very, very important.
yeah. And I think the other thing is I'm guessing that means that Darcy had a bit of a better game too. Free him up a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Shall we move
Although I don't
on
think that was even.
to
Yeah.
Friday night's game,
Sure.
which I believe you have?
Whoa. Yes, I do. And oh man. Look, I'm gonna give a slight warning to Crows fans. This will be a bit critical of the team because it goes on from what some of those things I mentioned last week. And I don't want to take too much away from Freo because I thought they did pretty well. But the fact is this win, like a lot of Freo's wins this year, is just sort of more of the same. Like there's a lot of good performances. It does gel together quite a bit. But as I said, there's just quarters that they sort of go in and out, but they're getting the job done. Credit to Fremantle.
Yep.
I thought they did really well. But yeah, so to set the scene for you a bit, Fremantle got 9-15, 69. Very nice score. I think thanks for Fast Freddy for kicking the extra point near the end of the game, getting it to the nice score. And Adelaide, 4-10-34. And yeah, it was a beautiful game in Perth, and it was error-riddled. The turnover count was 67 Fremantle, 74 Adelaide. And basically the Dockers defense just blanketed an anemic Crows attack, while doing just enough with their own inside 50s. I would say that a lot of the time Freo were able to get the ball across their half, lock it in there, but the entries left a bit to be desired, despite being overall better. The Crows defense, I think, tried really hard combating both, the smaller players on the ground and defending just so many turnovers. I mean, both teams obviously did that, but Freo were just getting the ball to ground a bit more, making those entries a bit harder for them. But Adelaide generally rebuffed them well. And yeah, Sarong had a quiet game, first for the season, until he moved to the wing. Then Fife and Young feasted in the middle. And also for Adelaide on the midfield, Dawson continued what I would probably say, I said mediocre. For his standard, it's a disappointing start. He had 27 disposals at 48 efficiency and 7 clangers. And I think he was like one of the biggest blazers inside 50. And yeah, and another, I would say, in terms of general play, both teams had one quarter where they had forward half dominance. It wasn't just Fremantle working the ball over, but I think the difference in the game was that Freo in the second quarter had 7 scoring shots to 1 and won that quarter by 11 points, whereas Adelaide dominated the time inside forward 50. And they just generated 2 scoring shots, 2 behinds, and lost the quarter by 25. And that sort of sums up Adelaide's start of the season right now. And I'll dive into it a bit. I'll let you say a few thoughts if you have any of the game. But another blow for Adelaide was they're going to risk the run and carry of Wayne Millerer, who I think was just starting to warm up. I thought he was pretty impressive last game and started off this game well, but unfortunately went off with what is an ACL injury and will be missing most of the season.
It's really unlucky for him that he
Yeah,
ACL.
no, honestly, I think him and Salem, like 2 very similar halfbackers that just keep on dealing with injuries that I think just really could have, they're just the typical modern day halfbackers that I think could have been like one of the better ones. Obviously, Salem's now got the new role in the midfield. I hope he does really well in that and continues some good health. But yeah, Miller, it's just a shame, really. I I really rate him as a player, but yeah, as I said, it's a bit unfortunate there. So, did you manage to see much of the game or hear about it? Is a bit
No, I did not manage to see much of the game, so feel free to
it's
keep going on your tirade.
unfortunate. Oh no, that's all right. But yeah, I'll you know what? Before I go into Adelaide, I will highlight some players. The limelight and the lowlights. So for the limelights, which again are players that feature in the AFL, like they're the players that you just the big names getting the big scores. We got Hayden Young, absolutely relished that extra midfield time when Sarong got out. A lot of run and carry, a lot of good ball use, and like Brayshaw, he runs both ways. Like
Hmm.
he's starting to add to that to his game, and it's making Fremantle a lot more threatening in terms of interception and when you're rushing to get that ball inside 50, but you're kicking it to Alex Pearce and Ryan, who are both in the limelight.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said, it's just, yeah. And Walters, I know he was inefficient. Everyone was inefficient that game. There was only, and we'll get to it a bit later, there was only a few people without any clangers, and Walters was definitely not one of them. But yeah, his presence and his presence in the forward line was really threatening, and if he kicked straight, he would have just stunk the Crows. Yeah, and Jordan Clark as well had an absolutely big game for Freo.
Yep.
Run off halfback, one of the best generators for them. And for the Crows, I thought Keane had a really good game against Tabernar, I think it was. Just double checking. He didn't really do that much. Not many of the forwards did, but yeah, it was. Sorry, he was in defense on Tracy.
Oh yeah, that makes
It was
sense.
also quiet anyway. But yeah, as I said, there was a lot of rebounding to do. He was one of the best spoilers, and had a few intercept possessions. Crouch again, he's just a lot more cleaner. He's not doing as much, I feel now, like in terms of racking possessions, but they just seem to do a bit more nowadays. I think he's worked on that game, and I think he's a better player because of it. And Rory Laird had a fantastic game.
Yep.
In the spotlight, which again, they didn't make the AFL's recognize thing, whatever they do at the end of each match report, but I thought were important. I'm giving a shout out to Worrell because he was the only player to be going at 100% efficiency. And in
Good
that game,
statistic.
I just salute you because there was a lot of people knocking around 50, and as I said, he got the 10 possessions. Oh, sorry, no, it wasn't Worrell, it was Borlays. All right. But yeah, Worrell and Borlays. Yeah, they both did really well.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Sorry, I was going to put Borlays in as a joke, but I forgot about it. Worrell was playing on Amos, kept him very quiet, and did a great job there. I think Smith on halfback as well was very important for Adelaide running and setting up their game.
Hmm.
For Fremantle, Ethan Hughes, fantastic on the wing. Probably his best game for the season, especially in a position where Freo were looking to fill it in and hoping he lifted up. Generally a lot of disposals, fairly clean, kicked a goal himself, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and the young Draper for Fremantle. Not related to Sam Draper, if you haven't watched many Fremantle games. He is, Sam Draper from Essendon.
Correct.
He is from Somalia, I think, or has relationships. His parents were from Somalia, I think.
There,
But
there is
yeah,
there is
he's,
a connection there somewhere.
yeah, not to Sam Draper. I'm just saying two different people.
To the
Like,
heritage. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, young defender for Fremantle. Second game. First game, he was sort of like defensively, he was okay. Just didn't really get the ball as much. Wasn't involved in the transition play.
Hmm.
This game, he was a bit more in it, and it was good to see because he's got a bit of pace on him. He seemed to be scarily. He didn't have too many clangers. Fairly skilled with his disposals, and I'll be excited to see how he goes with the time in his backline because yeah, they have a few players coming back, but they'll be a few weeks away. I think the next one coming back might be either a Driscoll or Warner
Yeah.
from their knocks.
Which could
So,
be in the next couple of weeks, could be after.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Whatever.
it is, yeah. But as I said, I don't think either of them are playing in gather round, but they've got some players coming back, and their defense is always also looking good. I think Freo will be fairly happy with where they're at.
Yep.
But yeah, Adelaide, they had 32 points. Their expected score was 46 or 49. You'll hear about a bit about X scores because I was looking at it from another game, but
Mhm.
I also applied it to the Adelaide game. And yeah, they did not get any deep entries in their forward line. A lot of their set shots were from angle.
Yep.
Anything close to goal was all from general play. The one set shot that they did get inside 40 meters was a missed behind. I can't remember who kicked it. I think it might have been Fogarty or something. And yeah, it was pretty dismal. And I think that's a bit of a highlight. Like we said last week, it was the entries inside 50. And that was right for that week. I think that's still a lot of a struggle. And I think, it's still a part of the reason they're not doing that well. But this game just sort of also cemented the fact that it is literally their forward line also struggling. Yeah, they really had no pressure against them. In the game, the Dockers had, they had 44 entries inside the 50, and 40 of them were rebounded. So
Mhm.
that means the only 4 goals were the ones that they'll manage to keep inside.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah, and the stat from last year, they've dropped adding to the stats that I talked about last week, they had 11 contested marks from 2023 on average to
Mhm.
5 contested marks inside 50. And yeah, as I said, the intention rate to go with that stat has gone from the best in the competition to West Coast standard, dropping a whole 10%. So I
Oof.
think it was,
That's rough.
yeah, it was. I mean, because obviously they're fairly high, because most either go to a goal, but it's just the way to generate that few extra scores.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you can keep a few behinds, keep it inside your 50 and convert that into a goal. So yeah, it's dropped from 10% from about, I think it was like 85 to 72 or something. And yeah, and funnily enough, 10% was about just over how many inside 50s um, were converted into a goal for Adelaide that entire game.
Hmm.
It was single digits. It was bad.
That is not
Um,
pretty.
no, by far it was. And, as I said, you look to the toll players, and obviously they're missing Phil Thorpe. I still think Burgess, presenting wise, is actually one of the better ones of them. I think, it's always hard when you're a key player going into a new side,
Mhm.
and especially one that's going as badly as Adelaide. And I think still Burgess, give him a bit of time. I think what he's doing so far. Tex, he's only a bit off uh, his output. Obviously not goals, because he's not getting as much of them, but in terms of marks and scoring involvements, it's not that bad for him. But as I
Mhm.
said, it's just what they're missing from, um, you know, um, sorry, Darcy Fogarty. I don't really want to harp on about him too much because I've already mentioned him before, but it's just he was that centerpiece that had to be good because of Phil Thorpe being out, and it does go to bad luck, so it's a lot of pressure for the kid. He's still fairly young, but it's obvious just not happening for him. Um, and Rankin and uh, Rankin, Rochelle, and all their small forwards, they're not even offering. Like I looked at it, marks on lead,
Yep.
and all of them, anyone that wasn't a key player was under. I think they were all like 1 in the 3 matches that they've played. So they're at 0.3 average,
Mhm.
which is just not enough, really. I know the entries have been bad, but you just gotta, yeah. And you look at the forward lines, it doesn't really seem that exciting on the eye test. It's a bit stagnant down there. Like it is, it's just they're not getting involved. And even Josh Rochelle, who was moved from the forward line into the guts, even in the guts, he really didn't have much. He attended 50 centre bounces, didn't get a clearance, 13 possessions.
Mm-hmm.
So for the promising youngster, he was just very quiet. And, as I said, what you say last year, is, you don't want to put much pressure on the kids to perform, because they were quite inconsistent and you
Yep.
would hope that they would take the next step. But
Mm-hmm.
again, a lot of these players are like 20, 21, 22, 23. So you don't want to, like, I'm not going to say they're not putting in the effort. They're not, doing this, that, or the other. But what is apparent is that there's not much place to succeed in Adelaide at the moment, or there's not much recipe for success. And something drastically needs to change over the next couple of weeks, or it might be a bit hard for some of these youngsters to try and, push through it on their own. Because, as I said, Rochelle, I think a lot of people were like putting him to get like a few Brownlow votes, all that sort of thing. I mean, I'm fully in him, and I think he'll bounce back. But yeah, as I said, it's just not happening. Saligo is another one. He a few clangers inside 50. And there's just yeah. So yeah, it's concerning for Adelaide. And systematically, I think at this point you've just got to look at small steps, because I don't think it's going to be fixed in a couple of weeks. I think this is more than a slow start. Like, as I said, even like Collingwood and Brisbane, some of the stuff happening to them, you can sort of shrug your shoulders at. There's enough there, but like, as I said, if I've highlighted, and again, like, this is what I was saying, is if I was having a go at Collingwood for sometimes like their midfield not defensively being strong enough and that going to their defense, I think Adelaide's the flip side of that, where offensively their midfield, it's making a lot of rushed entries. It's asking a lot of a forward line that just doesn't quite have it together. And it's just creating a vicious cycle where if one of those things could improve slightly next week, whether it be marks, whether it be the quality of their inside 50s, get that conversion rate up, or whether it's, their forwards or either their tolls or smalls kicking goals, that it would be much a sight for sore eyes for Adelaide fans who are worrying a bit at this moment. I hope they'll bounce back. Again, young team. I wouldn't expect. I wouldn't be surprised to see if the bounce back is sharp, but
yeah,
it's definitely worrying statistically at the moment.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I just hope that they give us some positive signs that they're starting to find their true form again over the next couple of weeks, especially with Gather Round this week. Like,
exactly.
you want them to be able to put on a show.
Exactly, And I will say, like, as much as, their defense technically has improved. Like, there's no doubt about that. Like, I think some of their defense against the Tolls have been a lot better. But yeah, as I said, it's just a shame that that's not, being the addition that they need to continue being a powerhouse from last year. It's just so upsetting that forward line. And I'm upset, like, said, oh, you're a Port fan, I live in WA. I don't really have a hatred for Adelaide. The reason why I'm so upset was it's just such good football to watch last year.
Yeah,
I don't want to see it again. And I hope that they get at it. If they are going to struggle early, please just be shit until the showdown, and then maybe be good afterwards.
You want Port to dominate in the showdown. A little bit biased there.
Look, I generally I like it when I think steel sharpens steel. Like, you want good games against good teams. Like, I'd rather win a close one than absolutely dominate the Crows.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Crows have gotten the wood over us a couple of times, and I don't like it. I wouldn't mind seeing a spanking at the same time. So I hope they get better. If they don't, be crap until the showdown. Just summarize it there because I feel like I'm getting a bit too into the Crows, but hopefully they'll recover.
It's a fair assessment. Like,
as I said, I don't think it's like I said, I don't want to single out any players because I think it's more than that. It's just a systematic thing. And it comes down to coaching. But again, when you got young players and things aren't working, sometimes issues can compound. But at the same time, sometimes issues can be a bit fixable because young kids are keener to learn and, we might see a bit of improvement, hopefully. If not, it's looking to be a bit hard for them.
Sounds good. I know there is one more Good Friday clash that we will touch on, but I want to move on to my Saturday game.
Continue at the end, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to Essendon and St Kilda. I was at this game, and
it was what a blurst game.
What a frustrating game to watch! Oh my god! Out of the entire league so far this season, there are pretty much two teams that are really hard to kind of put your trust in, and it's these two.
Yeah,
because they're that inconsistent. So the scoreline was 10-11-71 to 9-13-67. So I still believe that St Kilda should have won this.
Oh, absolutely.
But they were just horrible. They don't know how to play four quarter football. They always stop at the fourth when they really need to keep going. They did it last year. They do it this year. It's a systematic thing. Like three quarters of the game, they are a really, really solid team. Like, especially when you have like Jack Sinclair, Jack Steele, Seb Ross, all on ballers and all really, really good at what they do. Bradley Hill with his running carry. Like they have so many good pieces. I mean, granted, it doesn't help that Max King was out, but also, they 2 Meter Peter was out. So like it kind of balances it out anyway for this match. But the point is like, you have so many good pieces. They just seem to just stop in the fourth, and I don't understand why. Yeah. But I'll get more into that in a minute. Nick Martin matching the Essendon all-time disposal record with 44 touches.
Yes.
I know Ken Corns has a little bit of issues with this because it's also including kick-ins, which were like 15-20% of his touches, but they count as disposals. They're going to count as a stat anyway. It doesn't matter too much. But I mean,
I don't like putting too many asterisks. It's just like sometimes you got to look back and like appreciate disposal records at the times, and because they're different eras of football, but this deserves to be a record. Yeah, all the same.
He was playing at 75% efficiency with those disposals. 5 score involvements as well, which is good coming out of the back line. Kyle Langford and Jake Stringer look really, really good as a duo. They both scored 6-3, 8 marks inside 50 as well. So they were like a strong marking pair. Very dangerous as well when they're both on. I think that's the best game I've seen from Andrew McGrath in a long time. I thought he had a really stellar game. I thought Dyson Heppel and Zach Merritt also had really, really strong games, which is...
Merritt might be... He'll have a few Brownlow votes.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Like, he's doing really well so far this season.
Yeah.
And honestly, Heppel too. Like, you'd think he might be, not still performing as well, but he's going into his, twilight years of... He's like, what, late 20s?
He's very suddenly converted into, like, from an explosive player into, like, role-playing veteran.
And maybe that's what he needed. Maybe he just needed the set goal.
Yeah.
And rather than have so much around him that he needed to control.
Exactly. Like, I'd rather a player do their job than try and overextend a bit too much, especially if they're not that sort of player. Like, I mean, wingers, you can do that because sometimes you need a bit of pace on the wing, get the ball forward. If they don't get as many possessions, at least they've got the option there that they need to cover. But yeah, sometimes with the inside men, especially with Essendon historically, having a lot of inside mids that aren't really good at winning their own ball, which Heppel sometimes struggled with. So him converting his role into something a bit more useful is good to see.
Big negative. I thought this was a really funny one though. Riley Bonner, the new turnover king, 17 turnovers, which is the highest of any one match since 2012.
Yeah.
Not a pretty sight.
Yeah, because also Rowan Marshall, slightly different. Clanger and turnover. I don't actually really know the difference between the two.
I think a turnover is when you dispose effectively, but it's obviously like marked or taken possession of by the opposition. I think a clanger is when it's in a contest.
Yeah. So Rowan Marshall also got 14 clangers, which pretty impressive. Like it's attacking at both ends. You got the turnovers on one end in the back line, and then in the middle you got the powerhouse clangers to cherry on top. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Look, as someone who's grown up with a lot of Riley Bonner in my life, it just comes with the territory.
I know he's a former Port player. He kind of get the package. He
gets a lot of ground, and some of the kicks he does are great. And the last 2 weeks he's been generating a lot of run from his long booming kicks. But sometimes for someone who was recruited for pinpoint accuracy off both feet, he definitely doesn't. It's a combination between both disposal and decision making at times, and he'll do that rinky dink loopy kick in the half back line that's a bit too slow and gets chopped off, which is always annoying. It's one of my most hated things in football. But yeah, so it comes with the territory.
Yeah, it's a bit unlucky.
You're not going to drop him for it, but it is kind of funny that it happened to him. Someone, it's just very believable for him to have that record.
We'll touch on injuries. Unfortunately, they all came to Essendon. Will Setterfield was a late change with knee soreness. Sam Durham suffered a shoulder injury. I think it was about halfway through the game, off the top of my head. And Xavier Dersman was also a late injury in the game. I think it was something knee related. I can't remember, but I need to.
He's had a lot of problem with knees, yeah.
Yeah, despite running being one of his best features. So he might be out for a couple of weeks. I don't know how bad it was. Might have to have a look at that later.
Well, apparently he busted out the bow and arrow. Talk about things you like to see.
He got to have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I think Essendon's a good side for it. Essendon's a weird team where people get hyper focused on the exact things they do or don't do at times. You get it with the big fan base, but it's just exciting to see. I love whenever you get a goal. Yeah, you feel a bit of a boost. I feel like Essendon are a bit of a momentum side anyway, so maybe they'll benefit. I'm not sure about the CBA on the the old celebrations, how much they impact further scoring, but in my heart, I reckon there's maybe 1 or 2 goals generated per year from a celebration, getting the team up and about.
Yeah, if it increases team morale, there's nothing bad about it.
Yeah,
it's just whether it's overconfidence.
Not my most scientific claim on this podcast, but I still believe it.
It's these two teams that are so frustrating to watch. That when I was at the game,
I did mention it a bit beforehand. It was Essendon obviously have a bit more concerns with the defense. St Kilda have a bit more concerns with their offense, especially with Max King out, and just sort of culminated
he'll be back this week. But
yeah, obviously it was just a 1 week suspension, but it was just. It really did feel, from at least the stats and the few highlights that I watched, it was a game of cancelling out, and Essendon just converted when it mattered and got the W.
Pretty much the best way that I could describe this game, it was a clown fiesta. That's how much of a mess it
Look,
was. And it was just all over the shop.
yeah, I still think that Freo Adelaide had to be worse. Um, although
Yeah, but what's
this doesn't inspire confidence.
no.
Yeah.
They're probably the two other teams you can't put the most
You'd hope
faith
there's a
into.
few weeks before another game as bad as these two comes up.
Yeah.
You hope. Especially in Gather Round, a lot of sold out venues
In Gather Round, you
currently.
want to hope that every game is going to be exciting.
Yeah,
Even with the,
exactly.
the
So,
West Coast game and a North game, you want them to be as fun as they can be.
you know, yeah, you just gotta hope. But yeah.
All right, shall we
All
touch on
right.
the other Good Friday clash in North Melbourne and Carlton?
Just briefly, there's not really much to say at it. I wrote a paragraph.
No, go for it.
Um, yeah, Carlton's common threats really provide too much for the Roos defense to handle. A lot of the times they got caught with infringing deep. Um, sorry, I should say that the Roos defenders infringed deep because they were just, you know, outsized. There was a bit too much pressure for the ball coming in, and they just led to easy goals.
I did catch
Both,
some of
well,
this, and yeah, they just looked like they were always getting outpositioned as well. Like they just had better
yeah,
run.
it was just structure, and it's like as good as the inside game has been for North. Carlton's outside game shows you why you need both
Mm.
because George Hewitt on the outside, yeah, it's a bit inside and outside, but yeah, he was absolutely fantastic. And they just had a lot of run. The Hollands, it's not just Oliver nowadays. His brother,
Yeah,
I'm
it's his
guessing.
brother. Yeah, they're
Uh,
brothers.
yeah, came in after his small suspension. It was what was it? It was trouble for
It was
something.
some sort of
Um,
misconduct, you know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Elijah was absolutely fantastic. Kicked a goal, a lot of scoring involvements, and yeah, said it just felt higher up into the ground. Like it wasn't just the forward line that, it wasn't just the matchup, it was a bit before that too.
Hmm.
Uh where Carlton were able to dominate. Whereas yeah, what I remember from North Melbourne, who again showed signs like getting the ball forward, moving, I said a couple of weeks ago, if you put the thumb over the defense, it's still nice to see 12-9-81. But yeah, as I said, they're just gotta it's got to be a bit more complete from them, as I said. And I've been saying this a few times, but yeah, their outside game isn't quite as good, and they're relying a lot of inside midfield gut running,
Hmm.
which is just a bit unsustainable, like when the game gets tired, it's a bit harder to get that. You just sort of need that run from the outside, which the Rees aren't quite getting at the moment. But
Yeah,
the contributors, Shizel, Powell, fantastic games. Zerha presented a bit inaccurate. Larky kicked 3 goals. Curtis has also been pretty great this year. Kicked another 3 for him.
that's good.
He's probably the second biggest goal kicker for North, I think. I don't have it on me, but I'm just gonna say it. But yeah, so
I did catch
yeah.
the unlucky injury to Callum Coleman Jones that happened
Oh
late in
yes,
the
no,
game.
that's the
Oh no,
pretty
actually, it was
crap.
midway in the game. But yeah, that was really unlucky for
Yeah,
them.
it was, and as I said, Um, yeah, it just sucked. It was just one of those things, got caught up. Looked to be innocuous at the time, but sometimes they're a lot worse because if it's innocuous, it means something's just snapped. Yeah, you're gonna miss most of the season. He was looking okay for North, it was like not, you don't judge him too hardly, but from what I saw, he was sort of presenting, as a bit of a third option for two very strong forwards, does a bit in the ruck.
Hmm.
And it's a bit of a shame because, he's just a useful player for them to have around while they're in this rebuild, mainly focusing on attack. And yeah, it's going to be hard for them to fill his shoes. I will say, again, like as much as I say the young North Melbourne defense,
Hmm.
Aiden Core and I don't like highlighting player performances, but he was just bad. Um, yeah,
There's one way to put it.
free goals scored against him. Matched up on Kerno, who had an absolute field day. I think, what was it? Yeah, Kerno kicked 4, McKay kicked 5. Both had 4 free kicks for them to help them out,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're doing that, it's just so hard, you know. And, like, sometimes the free kicks don't matter. They were going to get beaten anyway. But, it's just
But if
more
you're
for, I
infringing,
guess,
it kind of just
yeah, it's more for the matchups when they're a bit more advantageous. You don't want to get that habit into the young kids.
yeah.
And yeah, as I said, for a player that North wanted to bring in, get a bit of stability, he's definitely been underperforming. And I think the coach will definitely want a bit more from him, to, even just for that leadership, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Because in good system. Unfortunately, yeah, just not delivering at the moment in what is a pretty struggling backline. They concede a lot. Sometimes they look okay, but definitely against the Tolls, they just look abysmal. And there's not much you can do about it. We're expecting at the start of the year. Looks like it's going to hang on. So yeah.
Yeah, there's not much more
Only
you
other
can
thing I
really.
could say is that maybe the only game where Jack Darling kicks a bag of goals. Like maybe that's a game that he pencils in the Spoon Bowl, which I think is. Am I right if that's coming up? Maybe I'm wrong on
I
that.
think it's after Anzac Day.
Yeah.
So it's like halfway
So
through the first half of this season.
yeah, because I'm looking forward to when North actually face a few teams on their own caliber. Because on paper, it still looks like they could maybe outscore a team.
Mm.
Like it's not impossible. They've scored, I think, over 80 each time. It's just they've conceded over 100 points each time, and it's just interesting to see how deep that will go. But obviously against Carlton, you know, 32 scoring shots isn't that surprising.
No, I agree. I'm just gonna quickly check on when like their match against West Coast is actually happening.
It's not that important. It's just I
June
love it
8th.
involved.
Saturday, June 8th.
June 8th. Oh, it's a bit
Which is
further
round
from
13.
May,
So I
June.
was right, it was in the first
Yeah.
half of this season.
Okay.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, that invoke. I don't know.
Plenty of time for them to
Um,
actually show a stronger defense.
yeah, I don't think it will happen. It's just again
They
at
just
the
don't have the
back end of the
personnel
year.
for it down there.
Yeah, no, it's a personnel issue. It's more just the style of play. Like seasons start open, they get more congested as the weeks go on.
Mhm.
So maybe that will benefit. Maybe they're just a team that will have to get the back end victories. Like I said, the opposite, and who we'll talk about in a second, Richmond, who got their win this week. Probably the opposite. They're probably like they defend pretty well off the fast play. And yeah, I'm very glad that they got their win. But yeah, as I said, North, probably a back half, maybe knock 3-4 wins, hopefully. And maybe, a couple of wins in the first half, and that gets them to, 4 or 5.
Sorry about that. No, yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
I know we kind of just went on for a bit there, but do
Yeah,
you want to just
sorry.
very, very briefly touch on West Coast and the doggies? I know there isn't really much to
Yeah,
talk
well, I
about
might
there,
as well brought,
but
yeah.
whilst we're here,
Well, I mean, it is a bit interesting. Like, in most games, West Coast just get dominated with inside 50s. They don't win the ball out the middle. But this game, they were statistically, you know, around the Bulldogs. Their inside 50s were the same. I think it was something like, uh, 17 a pop or something. I don't know. That seems a bit low.
yeah, it was pretty
Sorry.
low loss, I
Uh,
recall.
yeah. But, like, as I said, they were even. Uh, Let's see. Sorry about this. Let's
No, go
see.
for it.
Inside.
I didn't write anything down for this. I'm kind of just
Yeah.
winging what I
Okay.
remember.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Like they're both the same. West Coast, however, were they weren't able to get anything close to goals. A lot of their shots, directly in front of goals were from set play, not set plays, a ground play. They couldn't get marks inside 50. Darling, unfortunately, had another shocker. Papers writing about him. Jamie Cripps was uncharacteristically inaccurate with 1 goal 5.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, they were shut down, essentially. I think they only scored 1 goal in the second half. And as I said, and the worrying thing was, as I said, with the possessions and all that, equaling, but the Bulldogs midfield absolutely feasted. Bontempelli, who wasn't playing full midfield, scored 3 goals. But he was playing more of a forward role. 16 possessions, 9 tackles,
Mm-hmm.
still fantastic. Probably get the free Vanderlei votes anyway. Tim English got a couple. Absolutely slaughtered. Poor. Our favourite trier, BJ Williams, and Waitman. No, sorry, who am I forgetting? Yeah, Waitman, I think.
Yeah, I think you got Wayman. After his stellar
Waitman,
performance the week before.
Yeah, he sort of dominated poor skinny defender Hoff. That's it. And just sort of outmatched him. So as I said,
kind of just the same old at the moment.
Yeah, it kind of is, but it's like the same old, but different in not a very constructive way for the Eagles. They're definitely missing Oscar Allen. Like, with a bit more entries, he might have at least gotten a few marks.
Mm-hmm.
They need something in there, and I don't know. Like, the paper stopped saying, "Oh, put Jeremy McGovern forward and Darling in the back line," but also Jeremy McGovern is literally the one pillar of
In
West
the back
Coast
line.
defense.
Yeah.
Barras has been okay. Like, I'm not having a go at him, but as I said, it's just not that much support. Like, and I know like it's a bit different, but and you'll probably mention it. There's another team in the yellow and black where there's another player that's just absolutely dominating despite
I am
having
going to touch on
dwindling resources around him. And I wouldn't be touching him. Like, you gotta have him. Even if you're a struggling team, sometimes you just have to have the best players in the best position. I know it says a lot about the future, but defenders absolutely getting wiped off the mat isn't going to help West Coast at the same time.
No.
So they're just going to have to find something to get a few goals and fix that up. Harley Reid, she did okay, in case anyone needs.
I don't think anyone really needs it. They trust that he's going to do all right. It's just a team thing going up and down.
In case I made a few Eagles fans hyperventilate, because unfortunately, as I said, it's just not that interesting. Like, hopefully when they do a bit game, like if they have a close game, I'll try and dissect it a bit more, what they did right, and hopefully put a bit there. But it just feels a lot like last year.
Well, there's not much more you can really do at the moment. Just gotta hope and pray.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on to the Sunday games? I may as well start, since we've kind of gone on a bit of
we've missed one. Like, it just depends what do you want to do it.
No. I'll touch on mine first, since I'm already
You go first. You want to. I've mentioned the Richmond.
I want to talk about it.
Enthusiasm. Yeah, go for it.
We gotta win, ladies and gentlemen. We gotta win. It's good to be on the board. That's all we want. So the scoreline was 11-16, 82 to 11-11, 77. It shouldn't have been this close. We should have probably put them away, I will be honest with you. But I'll take it. 4 points is 4 points. I will take it.
Yeah.
As we just mentioned, Mr. Nick Floston, best on ground. 29 touches at 100% efficiency, 70 contested possessions, 15 intercept possessions, 7 score involvements, and 3 inside 50s. It was literally a masterclass in an intercept defender. You can't ask for anything more. I thought it was the best game that I had ever seen so far from Maurice Rioli. I thought his new simplified role as just a pressure unit is exactly what he needs to do. Like, he's good at running. He's got really good second and third efforts in a contest. That's all we can really ask for from him. Like, he doesn't have to hit the scoreboard. as long as he provides pressure, which is, what the Rioli family is kind of known for in the AFL is speed and
Mm,
pressure. Um, I thought I'm pretty happy with Tom Lynch's performance. He finally got to play a game that he had control of, unlike last week.
mm,
He scored 3-2 from 4 marks inside 50. He did have a late injury in the fourth quarter, which I will touch on in a moment. For
mm.
Sydney, I thought Jake Lloyd had a really, really good game in the midfield. 32 touches, 91% efficiency, 4 score involvements. And I thought he was key to breaking packs and just having a really good run, be able to carry the ball into their forward 50. James Rowbottom, I think, was Sydney's best
That's a
overall, though.
machine. Yeah.
19 touches and 13 tackles, specifically. Like, he was a really big shutdown player, especially as we gained momentum in that second half. Um, Also want to touch on Matt Roberts. I thought he had a really good game.
The kid,
Um,
yeah. How good is he
he
looking?
he was matching up against some of our younger players, so it was actually a pretty well balanced matchup for them. And I thought he stood really tall, shut down some of our smaller forwards who
Mm.
probably would have liked been in the game a bit more. But when all it's as it is. Isaac Heaney, you know
Oh, yeah, it's
the,
continuing.
the man might be
You're the he
strong,
dog.
but he's not that strong. I thought he was kept really quiet, especially in the second half. Fourth quarter, he was definitely a lot more active. But I think
Yeah.
second quarter as well. But I think the third quarter and the first quarter, he was kept really, really quiet. Same with Papley. Papley didn't really do
Mm.
all that much throughout the game. But overall, I'm really, really happy with what I saw out there.
Yeah. And like honestly, as I said, I think I've watched two of the Richmond games. And they've just looked very impressive despite some of the struggles that they've had at the start of the season. And it was one of those things where, like, a lot of the games you're like, oh, you don't really expect them to win. Like, they could have. Like, I think even in the Port match, there
Mm-hmm.
was, periods where they really could have actually got a bit more on top. And obviously the comeback if they didn't start so slow on the opposite side to the Gold Coast. But honestly, the way that they were performing, the heart that they have, and just as you've mentioned, the game plan that Uze's, sort of, that hybrid between what they were doing in their premiership year, but also still relying on the strengths of their younger kids coming in
Mm-hmm.
who play slightly differently. Especially off that halfback, a lot of that real good run from there. As I said, it would have been really disappointed if they just kept on getting those close losses and then just, because sometimes, teams will do that and then just go on a mega bad run.
Yeah,
They get a
yeah,
bit
yeah.
disheartened. And I imagine it would be very tiring for Richmond, playing that style. Like, I think they've got the capabilities to run it out, but, as I said, it gets harder when you lose players, like more is expected of you when you're running, two off the bench, especially in the modern game. And they've had a few of those games in a row. So
Yeah, we
I'm
definitely
really
have.
glad that they got that win.
Yeah,
And
all I
hopefully,
ask over like
yeah,
win or lose this season, all I ask is to just show up and give a good performance. Like I don't
yeah. And
even if it's a 5 goal or 10 goal loss, as long as there is something positive to
mm,
be shown from our game, like that's all that I'm happy
yeah.
with.
And look, they got St Kilda, and I'll briefly touch on it, but I reckon that's a matchup where, Richmond can
We could surprise them.
honestly look to, yeah, continue that. Because I think, as I said, in terms of intercept, and we'll, again, talk to it when we talk about the matches up, but I reckon they're a sneaky chance. I probably won't tip them, but geez, like, you know, the effort in the midfield, which is probably what some of the Saints' strongest, things, their midfield, maybe the defense.
I think
But yeah,
it's going to be fought in. I think the battle is going to primarily be fought in St Kilda's forward line and our back line.
Yeah,
But granted,
exactly. And
with
I think
our injury loss to both Tom Lynch and Noah Bolter, we don't exactly have a forward line at the moment again either.
yeah, it's gonna be hard to convert. But, on the flip side, yeah, no, I think there's a lot of optimism and, that was a really courageous win. And, in terms of like a fan base win, like honestly, probably the best for the season. Like, it's that win that Richmond just sort of needed um to have to get excited because, as I said, they're just losing players but playing well. They needed that positive reinforcement because I think what they're doing is quite good. And hopefully, if they have a good start of the season next year, build on that, they'll you know, go on the upward trajectory of the rebound.
Yeah, I agree. Another
A
injury
rebuild, sorry.
for Sydney
Yeah.
with Dane Rampy. He was subbed out
Oh
early
yeah, I
though,
saw
but
that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's really unlucky for them because he's always been a really strong competitor. He's always been one of my favorite players to watch
Mm.
at Sydney.
He's a rascal.
Exactly, why it's fun.
I love him. Well, king of the goalpost meta, king of the mustache, king of the bathrobe. He just provides a lot to the game, and yeah, I'm a Rampy fan.
Um,
And
all right, do we want to move on to the next game? You want to talk about?
yeah, and yeah, unfortunately, there's a bit to go into. It was a very interesting game. It was a match of the round, I would say. Oh, Richmond Sydney.
Richmond
In
Sydney was
terms
a
of
pretty interesting
play,
match
I
all around.
think I think Port Melbourne had the highest quality football. I think Richmond Sydney had the most exciting finish.
Yeah.
For the neutral, like I was really edge of the seat going for blah, 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 Richmond,
Yeah,
and
I'd say so.
yeah, but yeah, it was definitely something to talk about. In what was, as I said, cracking game. Port's midfield were able to dominate the clearances despite Gorn having an absolute feast on Soto in the ruck. Gorn racked up 50 hitouts.
hmm
Um, Port were able to get the ball inside 50 and mostly locked it in their forward half for three quarters. It was standard Port play. Um, it wasn't always the most efficient, but it was effective in just providing that pressure. But Melbourne would not relent to the constant barrage of entries. Jake Leither with 12 intercept possessions, 7 spoils. I'm giving him the best player on the ground. Absolutely rebuffed most entries. You know, even like I said, a lot of Port's entries were anemic, but some were just made to look a lot weaker by the fist of Jake Lever.
hmm
And it wasn't just him. Olive, Hoare, McDonald, and Lever combined with 20 spoils between them and really just shut down what could have been an absolute blowout for Port. But yeah, just as Port looked like they were going to finally convert some of their territory dominance into scoring advantage, they went up 68 to 52 just before three-quarter time. And Ben Brown and Maxi Gorn just said, no, 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 no.
Not gonna
Launched some
happen on my
absolute,
watch.
no, exactly. Not in my house. It wasn't even their house. They were like, now it's my house, now it's my kitchen. We're just going to send some absolute heaters from outside 50. 2 clutch goals, bring the margin back to 4. And yeah, Melbourne would continue the momentum with 3 unanswered goals to start the half. Port did fight back, but overall, Melbourne did win that quarter quite conventionally,
hmm
and they lost the arm wrestle by 7. But honestly, what a freakish performance. I mentioned expected scores before. If you're not quite familiar with them, it's basically the shots. You take the shots that happened on the day, like all the scores, and give them a rating, the misses, the gets, and you compare them to the league average and to see how much above or below you're scoring.
hmm
So the expected score for that game should have been 99-66 to Port Adelaide. The final score was 89 to 96 in favor of Melbourne. It was just absolutely freakish. Melbourne did not have a shot inside 20 meters, and they still produced that level. Had a lot of boundary line shots, a lot of, shots from outside 50. But yeah, on the flip side, Port, a lot of Melbourne's were off fast run of turnovers, and this is where the argument to say, while it was freakish for Melbourne, Port still got a bit of a worry
Mhm.
because it's just not that much pressure for so much dominance. Like, Port were getting a lot of fast breaks, but they would kick the ball to like a 2-on-1 to Willie Rioli on the boundary line. And although that's good for the setup, it locks the ball in.
Mhm.
It just means that it's not dangerous. The defenders aren't sweating as much because it's not like they're getting broken out. At least it's either going long to that, easy to spoil pack mark or down to the boundary where they're not getting that direct shot from it. And, it's one of those things where, and again, this is going in the intangibles of football where I feel like there's a bit of a curve, like in any match where a team's a certain dominance where like initially like there's not as much pressure because they feel like they're back in the game. It's like your 10 to 15, score margin where, you're not too sweating if you miss a shot. It's still disappointing, but whatever. And then you get like that real pressure between like that 20 to 30 point margin where you're like rushing your kicks inside 50 a bit more. You're thinking, we need a goal.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're out of this match. And then the flip side of that is afterwards, you're like, well, we're so far behind. We're probably not going to come back. We'll just do whatever. Go all guns blazing.
Just
We'll
do the
either
best you
die.
can.
Exactly. And because Port never really put that pressure of their 15 to 30 point margin, I feel like that just gave Melbourne so much confidence and credit to them. Any opportunity they had, they went. They got it.
It's like
And it was
you always just gave them a chance. That you didn't try and put them away. You just always gave them a small opportunity.
It's not the first time that teams have scored well against Port. It's like last year, the expected score against them was a lot higher. But as I'm saying, like Port didn't put away too many teams. You know what I mean? So, it's you can't just always put it in bad luck when it's, coming to what 1 point, we'll call it 1.2 of the season. This has been happening. So, and yeah, it just came to a lot of small moments. Lockie Jones was another one. He had a bit of a nightmarish game and he dropped a few marks, which let Chandler start some of the attacking possessions and what you would have expected to be like an intercept into attacking 50 led to a couple of the Melbourne goals. As I said, I will say I'm a bit surprised at Dylan Williams for Port. Much better user of the ball. I would like to see him because it's quite clear that Port, I think, are probably a bit too much on the pressure scale for this lock inside 50 game.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to adjust it a tiny bit. Like, obviously, they're not far off the mark. Like, this is splitting hairs against two really good teams. But yeah, I would say that if Port could just get a bit more quality, a bit more time and space, if they can, and this is the thing is, while Butters is brilliant, it's almost like he's the only one that will sometimes, and it's a credit to his ability to create space, but try and actually find that sharper leading up forward to hit up, and it spreads out defenses. It doesn't make it easy for him. One thing I will say on the flip side, and I saw this, I don't know what Kane Corns is on about. I know it's an easy person to bring up.
Kane Corns.
I know, but most of the times it's like relatively on the mark. But he said Port's defense let them down. But when you look at the shots they were giving away, like Van Rooyen, not a factor. Ben Brown until his like second half,
not a factor.
Like he wasn't like an inside forward 50 threat. He was just making the most of his limited opportunities. Granted, that was great. Fritsch and Pickett, not really a factor. Fritsch got a couple of goals, but he only had the 7 disposals overall. And, even Asafa Radaglia, like, you clown on him, don't know what he's doing, not spoiling that. That's just an Asava move.
Yeah, that one particular goal was just unlucky.
I laugh. Like, it was like, and the good thing about losing by 7 points is that you can't I don't know that you don't blame the entire moment on that, but it's just comforting in a certain way that those 6 points wouldn't have mattered as much. But honestly, like, he had so many spoils. He was like one of the best, um, one-on-one defenders on the game.
Mm.
It's just he gave away 6 points in a very dumb way, and his disposal's still a bit crap, but we knew that getting in. Like, he's played about what you'd expect him to, and I would say in the system, it's allowed him to be a bit better. I don't know if he's really that great a player, but I still rate what he's been able to do in Port's forward line.
I mean, you
And I think it's
recruited
very
him.
unfair.
You recruited him primarily for his height and being a marking option.
Yeah. And, for that makes Aaliyah free. And while he didn't, like, impose as much on that game, he was part of a defense that kept Melbourne quiet for most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, I've talked a lot about Port here. Melbourne, they look to be contenders again. The one loss against Sydney in greasy conditions just looks to be a bit of a whatever sort of game. They might still need a bit of tinkering with their forward line. It's really consistency, and it's a bit from last year. They get a lot of, when they can get the ball inside 50, they don't always convert. And I don't think this was a game of, proving that they can get those deep entries and, convert a bit more, because they were just getting freakish. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't coming from conventional deep marks, so they probably still want a bit more score from that. But honestly, they got near top four last year. Oh, sorry, they did get top four last year. Like, Port went out straight sets from just having a absolutely smothering defense.
Yeah.
They've been tested with injuries, but they're looking right on par to where they were last year. Put Gorney in the limelight. Neil Bullen, one of the best games I've seen him play. Not only run an effort, but disposal. Viney, absolutely fantastic. He was one of the best contested player for Melbourne, who, generally had a pretty quiet night. For Port Adelaide, Drew and Rosie, both the midfielders. I think Drew, again, hard nut. He didn't, he was a bit of the problem with, some of the entries inside 50, but just the opportunities he created were fantastic. Rosie, he was a touch of class on the night, snapped a few very important goals. Dan Houston on the rebound, fantastic, continuing his All-Australian form. And the spotlight, the bloody didn't even recognise Lever in the AFL thing,
That is ridiculous.
Sometimes they're just so blind to defenders. But he was having an absolute fantastic game.
Which is so interesting to me, considering how hurt he was last week. And it was even a risk to put him in this week anyway.
Look, and I'm not saying, I think Port could have done more to, really stretch him along the ground. Obviously, against Charlie Dixon, Charlie Dixon, he can't, his stride, he can get a bit of, run, but he's not like a constant lane sort of lead up. He's that one, kick it to me, I'll get the crash packed, sort of person.
Yeah.
An okay game. And yeah, as I said, so, as I said, I would have liked maybe a bit of rotation in the forward line, having one person deep and then trying to get that lead up for Lever, really test him out. I just felt really congested at times. And yeah, as I said, for what was, a defense still held together, still systematically good. We didn't exactly make it hard on the Melbourne defenders with the opportunities that we were able to generate. But again, part of that just comes with the way Port plays. Again, it's a constant debate why Hinkley maybe not the premiership coach. He has a game plan that's good enough to get him a good regular season record, but just, it's hard against really good defenses to just approach attack that way. And, hopefully it'll improve a bit in the season. I think there's signs to where it might get a bit more in-depth. I'd just like to see a few more forward patterns. Ed Langdon for Melbourne as well. Fantastic on the wing. Had another clutch goal.
Yep.
All their goals were clutch, but you know what I mean. Very good distributing. Travis Spoke had a fantastic game before he was injured in the last quarter.
Oh, that's unlucky.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be long. I think it was just a knock. It was he ran into Soldo, I think, and
The
just
friendly fire.
got really sore. Put him on ice, would like to have him out there, but you're just not going to risk someone like Boki, who's still contributing. Unfortunately, Jace Bergwijn, who came on, didn't really find much of the impact. So, it looks like it's going to be a Bergman on the wing.
Yeah.
And Zach Thatcher, still fantastic. He was on Fritch, I think. I should always write these down because I like look at them and take note. But yeah, kept him really quiet.
Fair enough.
Fantastic game by him. He's just a fantastic one-on-one defender. And I'm right, he was on Fritch. For what was weird, because it was like, the worst one-on-one defender in the competition. But honestly, I think Essendon are just a good defensive team. I think the system could have helped them out a bit more, and it's proving to thrive in, what is normally a systematically very good defense.
Yeah.
Obviously struggles last year. I think despite the, 96, I think Port are defending quite well. It's just, the ridiculous scores of that match that sort of just made it look a lot worse than it actually was. Credit to Melbourne though, like it's one of those things where I shrug my shoulders. I just hope that Port can beat, because they got the Demons doubleheader.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one of those things where it's not as big as issue if Port can like pull out, but when you got those head-to-head games, like if you want to make top four, like it's so important to draw them. And especially a team like Port where you got the showdown where it's like sometimes the team that's not going well just gets that upset victory. Obviously, Port went 0-2 in that.
Mm-hmm.
So when that game ends up a 50-50 as well, you don't want too much of your double headers going. Like, you want to sweep at least one of them, normally against the bottom team.
Yeah, I
if
agree.
not two. And at the very least, get one-on-one. And if you do that, you're probably going to make top four, where Port want to be at the end of the year. And again, I went on about it. Port structure, fine. It does feel a bit like Osbear repeating last year, where it might seem a bit not enough. But Melbourne also fantastic, well structured, doing well with the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Credit to them. Fantastic. Love it.
Fair enough. We don't have many notes on on the Easter Monday game between Geelong and Hawthorn, but we will briefly touch on it by talking about the Lightning. Or the threat of lightning, as it technically is.
Yeah.
Affecting play and stopping play for roughly 40 minutes, give or take.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I did actually have a look into this and how the whole adjudication process actually works. Mm-hmm. Is that if they're able to continue play prior to a certain point in time, teams will get a specific amount of time to re-warm up. So if play stops and is delayed due to this, it's a minimum 20 minutes. They initially expected it to stop for half an hour. So, and if they hadn't been able to get back onto the field prior to that half an hour, they would have gotten a 5-minute warm-up time. If it was between 30 and 40 minutes, they get an 8-minute warm-up time. And then if it's between 40 minutes and an hour, I think it's like a 9.5 minute. And then if there's anything after that, then it becomes up to the commission to whether, because commission does technically oversee all of the games. It comes up to the commission as to whether they stop the game in its entirety, and whatever score is up to at that point, the leading team will get the 4 points. Or if the weather has died down enough after that, they will see the game out and just see what happens.
Yeah.
So
that's one of the things. A lot of these things got brought up last year when the lights went off at the Gabba, which we were actually together with. We were on holiday in Adelaide meeting a friend.
Yes, we were.
But it was absolutely amazing that it's happened twice so close together. But
it's
just
going to be something to happen on Hawkins' 350th, right? Got to celebrate it somehow. Might as well celebrate it with weather.
It's just like, Honestly, it's like that farmland influence, It's can't be a farm boy without getting screwed over by the weather.
Yep, that's
But
very true.
yeah, no, I said it's just one of the things where it's like you try the best that you can do. The AFL, yeah, I think in both. I think it was a bit iffy to restart the Melbourne Brisbane game just because it was so late.
Yeah, back then, yeah.
You just feel sorry for the players because just it's so hard, especially when you're an athlete, to like, especially in a high endurance sport, to like warm your body up, then go cold, and then be
And then try
expected to
and warm it
gut
back up.
run. All the adrenaline goes away. You're feeling those bumps that you might get away with only feeling when you're trying to get to sleep at night later on in the line. So,
Yeah, which is
it's just,
what really hurt Hawthorn in the lead up to the warm up and going into that final quarters. Both Nick Watson and Mitch Lewis got injured
yeah,
going into
exactly.
that.
So,
So it's
and,
sometimes
and
it's
it's,
sometimes just not worth it.
yeah, and exactly. So the AFL just has uh, a responsibility to make sure their players don't get injured.
Mm.
I don't know whether it was the right decision to start on both of those. It went off, it's hard to adjudicate, but you just don't want to see an injury at that sort of level. But at the same time, if Hawthorn somehow made a comeback and ended up running over the top of the Cats, you'll be like, oh, the AFL, gave Hawthorn a win that they wouldn't have got if they closed it off. But
Yeah,
that didn't happen.
yeah.
I don't really see many teams overrunning a team after that break. I just
Well, I
think it's
mean,
just
Melbourne did
just
against
so
Brisbane,
hard.
but that was because no, they didn't
That
because
was
that
a
was
bit
at the
different.
Gabba. But
No,
there
well,
was
that was
there
more
was a
like
team that it happened at
it was.
some point though.
No, well, Melbourne and Brisbane, like Melbourne got a lot of percentage back because
Oh yeah, no,
Brisbane were
Brisbane
just
still won, but
chewing
it
the
became a
rat,
closer
you
percentage
know.
game. That's right.
Exactly. And that was sort of the argument is that, well, Melbourne's the only team that can advantage from this. Brisbane's just like, I hope to, we
Hold
don't get
on.
injured.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's just like, but at the same, it's not like Melbourne were like gut running all of it. It was just, Brisbane were a bit more tired than Melbourne were. So, or at least
So
that's how I remember
I
it.
did actually manage to catch the last quarter though, and it was just a
Yeah.
slog. Like it wasn't that pretty. But I did look at the
Yeah, for
stats
sure.
at the very least before we started, and despite the wet weather later on, early game it according to the stats it looked really really good for both teams. Like it became a close game by half time. Was only
Mm.
11 points in it. Of course, not Tom Hawkins. I think he finished the game with 3 or 4 goals. He had a usual standout performance in the forward line. Him and Jeremy Cameron.
Very good this year.
It was really good to see, at least stat wise, because I didn't get to actually look at the game.
Yeah.
That Hawthorn's midfielders had a much stronger game this week up until the break. So there's still some promising signs for Hawthorn to look forward to in the future. They just have to keep working at it, keep working on it. Hopefully,
Especially after last week is
after
is good.
that
Not a
was
key
not a great
game. You want to put a
performance.
bit of respect. Yeah.
So hopefully, if they come up against some weaker teams and actually use the structure that they've developed coming out of this week's game, that they might be able to, get some wins on the board and show a really solid performance.
There is a weird curiosity to see exactly the ladder order of Hawthorn, West Coast, and North for me. Like we touched on it earlier in the season.
Yeah.
A few arguments. I was definitely a lot more pessimistic than you were on Hawthorn at the start of the year. And it looks like
I thought they had opportunity, and who knows? Maybe we'll be right after.
Oh, they might. Like I said, I might run them off too early. But yeah, as I said, it's like they got like small pockets of optimism. Obviously, West Coast after the last week, the optimism sort of fading, but there's still bits of West Coast that's again, the fact that they were with statistically a team that's a fairly high caliber one. They've got to take that away from it. You got to get those lessons for the youngsters. But yeah, it'll be interesting when we actually get a few spoon bowls, see where the tips fall for that. But yeah, hopefully Hawthorn will pinch a win somewhere.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Honestly, I don't think there really saw that much more to talk about that game because, again, it only just happened.
Yeah,
we didn't really get the chance to watch it.
Brush over gather round predictions.
Before we do that,
I don't have any.
I'm going to touch on the MRO findings for the week.
All right, of course.
Primarily suspensions, because if there are only fines, like it doesn't matter too much to any sort of upcoming game.
Yeah.
So Marcus Windhager for St Kilda is out for one match for rough conduct against Sam Durham. Um,
Oh yeah,
so
that one. Yeah.
and Liam Baker is out for one match for rough conduct against Lewis Melican, which
Mm.
I feel like probably should have just been a fine. And Richmond could appeal it, but I don't know if it's really all that worth it. Both teams are facing, again, Richmond and St Kilda are going up against each other in gather round
Yeah.
anyway. So it's not
Yeah.
really. I don't know if it's really worth it. Like,
You
give
think
him the
they'll
week
just
off.
mutually accept the canceling out?
I mean,
Just have a gentleman's agreement.
they're both midfielders, so maybe.
Yeah.
I may as well give Baker the week off. Let him go home to WA, catch up with family for a bit. Maybe he'll come with us to gather around, sit in the
Yeah.
sidelines.
I
Let
think
him
you
do what
have
he
to go
wants. He's a
with the team, but
champion
yeah,
of our team.
exactly. You let him loose too much. West Coast might get into his ear.
Absolutely
Have a
not.
few whispers.
We will read him.
I
We will
won't talk about that too much.
as I quote Adam Ruse, we will give him the world if he wants to stay.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, so now we shall move on to round 4,
Gather
also
round.
known as
Yeah.
Gather Round, and we start off with the opening game of Adelaide and Melbourne at the Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, what probably would have been like a very good game to kick off starting the schedule. Yeah, I can't really see anything with Adelaide's forward line coming up against a Melbourne defense that
No,
are,
yeah, I think
you
it's
know,
just going to be a pretty convincing Melbourne win here.
yeah, like I said, I haven't written any of the things because, yeah, it's Easter. I've gotten a bit lazy and fat.
Haven't
So,
we all?
I'm going to go Melbourne by 20. I'm not really liking Adelaide. I think, again, they're, as I said, it's that midfield sort of battle, what they're going to be able to generate against. Because Riley O'Brien's actually had quite a good year, I think, so far in terms of taps. But, so he'll go up against Gorn. Their midfield matches up okay. Maybe, as I said, it's just that one thing. They need to get one thing right against Melbourne. If they do that, I don't really care if they lose. They'll go in a bit of a hole. Probably won't make finals starting from like 0-4, but as I said, it's still a young rebuilding team. You want to at least make sure that even if they don't get a good record this year, their trajectory's going well.
Yeah,
it's going to start with a forward line. So I hope to see that improve against Melbourne.
yeah, I agree with that. Brisbane and North, I think we can both kind of agree that this still just be another free Brisbane win over at Norwood Oval.
I don't know.
You'd like to hope that North surprise them.
I want to drink the bathwater and say that North have a chance because,
I think North do have a
both
chance, but I think we both kind of know that Brisbane will
weirdly similar to where,
break it.
obviously Brisbane conventionally have a much better defense than North. But, if they had a bad game or North's forwards go very well, Brisbane's midfield are struggling a bit. North are dominating the clearances. I don't think they've lost a clearance battle this year. So it's like, it's weird. It's like, yeah, maybe North's just a budget Brisbane, but, Brisbane aren't going that well. You hope. I'm still probably going to back Brisbane by 15. I think if I'm going to guess something about the game, the scoreline's probably going to be like 115 to 100.
I think it'll be a convincing Brisbane win, but North definitely have a chance, especially whilst Brisbane are in a little bit of a struggle street sort of period.
Yeah.
Possible match of the round, Port and Essendon at the Adelaide Oval.
Essendon. Yeah, and look, Port struggled. They had Essendon twice last year. Obviously, one of them was a Houston goal. Another one where Essendon were just, very trying and only just away from getting an upset victory over Port. In the other game, that is. So, two very close ones. I think the way that teams have been going off, Port Adelaide, I think they'll definitely have a lot easier time against Essendon's defence. And if it's conventional, they'll be able to score well. But if Port faff around, I think Essendon, like the way that they're structured, rebounding quickly, they've got the pieces to rack up a score against Adelaide, even if Port Adelaide, even if I think that, the toll matchup should be pretty convincing in Port's favour.
Mhm.
Essendon have shown if you bring the ball to ground on them, they'll feast. They love a ground ball get goal. So yeah, I'll pick Port. I'm wearing the
Yeah,
colours.
I'll probably
I'll
backboard here as
say that
well.
for 20 more rounds this season, but geez, if you're looking for a tip to maybe just go against the grain, I would consider Essendon.
I'm probably also going to go Port here, but because again, Essendon and St Kilda, as I mentioned earlier, they're probably two of the teams that I really struggle to just put any faith in at the moment, just because of the way that
Yeah,
they play is just too inconsistent.
yeah.
And plus, Port, despite the fact that they can convincingly lose on their own home ground, I think they will probably have a really solid advantage this week.
Yeah, it's not a fortress. It's not a
It's not
it's
a
not a
Gabba, it's not an
rad it's
MCG.
not a rad cage. I don't know. It's just yeah. Anyway, West Coast Sydney. Sydney vibe
Sydney,
too much.
I don't think we need to talk too much
Yeah,
on
it'll
that
be better
one.
than last year. Yeah.
Played out at Mount
Fremantle
Barker.
Carlton. I don't know how you're gonna put a number on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
It's
the other
gonna
match
be
of
a
it.
bit
Oh, actually, I think this match
I think
and Doggies
this
Geelong will be matches of the round as
yeah.
well.
It's just a good afternoon of football, ain't it? But yeah, Fremantle Carlton, I think it's like two teams, a lot of promise, but I think they're both looking for that four-quarter performance, and I think up against each other, they'll be really keen to prove, well, if you're a player, that they belong to be in deep finals conversation.
Hmm.
Um, Again, we're talking about the dual threat, but I think if any team can match up well against it, I think Freo, with the way that Pierce and Ryan is going, they won't accept the nonsense inside 50s. Fremantle have enough pace to match up on, you know, again, it's like, Fremantle a bit better on the inside of the midfield.
Hmm.
Carlton a lot better on the outside, said their attack from the wings being fantastic. And yeah, it's just interesting to see how much these two teams can set up. Both had relatively easy schedules, with the omission of Brisbane for each of them, but they've obviously been at bottom form. So, yeah, it's just enjoy the match, get a bit hyped by whoever wins. I reckon put the lid off. But yeah, as I said, it'll be interesting. I got no idea.
Yeah, I don't know, honestly.
I for some reason I feel like Carlton don't like Adelaide Oval, so I'm just gonna go Freo.
I was
But
considering
that's just
Freo.
finding a way to split the teams. I think on paper I like Carlton's team more than Freo, but I don't think that's necessarily always a good indicator for Carlton. They're a very formy team. But yeah, Flynn has.
All
We'll go
right,
10.
and then same game. Then the next game on the exact same day at the exact same oval, which I find really
Yeah.
interesting. That like there is only by the time Freo Carlton finish, it'll be 6:40 maybe because depending on how
Yeah.
many goals are kicked. Like
Well,
that'll gives them not even 2 hours to be able to clean up Adelaide Oval into
yeah.
and
Maybe they need to
let
put
people
like the
in.
team song on the ground, shower that ground with Gatorade. It's what plants need.
Yeah,
Just
they might have
just
to.
grass growing, exactly. But
Anyway,
yeah,
Doggies Geelong.
dogs versus cats. Throughout history, it's a big matchup for the animal kingdom, and both teams are showing a bit of form. Bulldogs obviously a bit disappointing in their opening game.
But have really
Um,
shown that they can
yeah,
improve and look
exactly. But
really good.
yeah, exactly. And they got the pieces where Geelong, undefeated so far, setting up really good attack. Again, they weren't so convincing against St Kilda, but they're in all aspects of the ground. They've been good. A lot more consistency, I
Mhm.
think, in the Geelong side. But yeah, the Bulldogs are a very formed team. A team that can win, 4 or 5 games in a row in the season. Sometimes, unfortunately, lose the same amount in the row, but
Yep.
I don't know. I just really like Geelong this year. From what I've seen when they played, they look set. They didn't lose by much last year.
Mhm.
Um, Look, I honestly think this is a form tip. I'm saying this goes to the wire. Picked Geelong by 3, but yeah, I'm just really interesting to see like how much attack the Bulldogs are able to generate and where it comes from, because you know what, I do think Geelong have the ability to. I mean, Geelong are going to score okay. I
Yeah.
think they've got their Bulldogs defense covered. I think Geelong could get exposed by the amount of Bulldogs attack. And it's just whether that comes from the midfield, whether it comes from the forwards. They don't always glue together for the Bulldogs. So I think for the Bulldogs to win, they've got to get a bit of synergy between the two lines. But again, that's picking hairs on a pretty good team.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably lean towards Geelong, but I might for this game I might just wait and see what the ins and outs are because that might depend on
Yeah,
important
that's another
matchups.
good one too. Yeah.
Um, the Suns and Giants out in Mount
Yeah.
Barker. I think this one
There's
could
sometimes a
also
few
go
upsets in this
either
matchup.
way, really. I think the Giants are probably just too strong at the moment, but I think the Suns
Yeah.
could also surprise them.
I just think matching up, like, again, in the best, like, the best bits about GWS and the best bits about Gold Coast tend to overlap. It's just like,
It's the
you know,
midfielders.
the midfield.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I just think the way the Giants midfielders are going, they're best in the competition.
Mm-hmm.
The way Gold Coast are going, you know, a bit upstart, sometimes go a bit missing. I just think there'll be a period where GWS is going to dominate a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be like one of those 20 to 25 margins where, like, for 3 quarters, they're actually pretty even. For 1 quarter, they get blown away. Still going to pick GWS. Interesting to see how Gold Coast go, obviously. This will be a good test up for them, especially at home. They've had a couple of victories at there already, so see how they go.
Richmond and St Kilda over at Norwood Oval. I think, and this is just going to be a battle of the midfields at the moment because where you
Yeah,
don't no longer have a forward line, St Kilda are fairly inaccurate at the moment, and their forward strength isn't as strong as our back
yeah.
line. So it's just going to be a real midfield slog, I think.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's opportunities, and St Kilda can still generate a few. They're not converting. Honestly, I think it will be, they'll probably just get enough numbers against Richmond to win. But geez, Richmond, honestly, it's so tempting to tip them, but
It's hard
hard.
to go against them at the moment after the performance they
St
just
Kilda
put
against,
against Sydney.
yeah, I'll say St Kilda for like 2 points now, but honestly, I like Richmond, the way Richmond's playing so much more. It's just literally injuries. I know they've just beaten Sydney, but
But we did
it's
get
just
two
a
important
lot.
injuries out of that, which kind of
Exactly, you know what I
wreck
mean?
us
So
into this
I
game.
don't know. And I don't think you're getting anyone back this. No, you
Not
were.
not a tall forward, unless we
No.
get someone in like Samson Ryan or Sam Naismith to be able
Yeah.
to rotate
Do you
in.
do
But
what Samson? Oh, Samson Ryan spoiled it to his own player, Falcon in the VFL. Did you see
yes,
that?
yeah, I saw that.
At the end of the match, killed the ball, just gave it a big whack. Oh, sorry, teammate. It's in your little noggin there. I was so tall I didn't see you.
I mean,
He had a good
we
game,
beat Sydney
apparently.
in the VFL, so I mean, it shows
Yeah.
that like even our younger players that are currently in the VFL still have some pretty good
Yeah,
promise.
exactly.
Um,
Um,
but yeah,
yeah.
I'm going to
I
go
want to tip
Richmond,
Richmond. I
but
don't think I will, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just a coward.
and then last game of the round, Collingwood and Hawthorn at the Adelaide Oval. Uh,
It's a good chance for Collingwood to get a bit of form back.
yeah, I agree, especially
Yeah, I
now that
think the
they've got
way
a
they
win
match
under their
up.
belt.
Yeah, it's like, as I said, like, they had a bit of, like I said, like, when I was saying, you know, the defense from the midfield, like, that was mainly the only issue from their midfield.
Hmm.
And I think it just matches up too well against Hawthorns. Hawthorn may have a chance to defend a bit better with the way Collingwood's been going. I still wouldn't call it a convincing attack at the moment, but yeah, if Hawthorn can stick around, be a bit annoying against them, that'll be good for them.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I think Collingwood are
Collingwood
probably
by
gonna.
like 20, 25. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Collingwood, I think, are clear favourites here. I think they're gonna win regardless. But
Yeah.
no, seeing that the Hawks actually had some decent form in the first half against Geelong, it'd be nice to see some of that some of that carry on into this week, and just
Yeah,
hopefully it's a little bit more
exactly.
promise and just show that they're on the right
Yeah,
track.
no, for sure.
Now that that's over, and I think everything else we've kind of wanted to talk about has been talked about. Shall
Yeah.
we?
Oh,
Shall I ask
okay.
you? What are you up to?
I totally blanked, honestly. Um,
Not doing
look,
much this week.
I don't remember. I've just dealt with Easter. I don't know if I can be bothered thinking of more things after that.
Yeah, I agree. The
So
future is tiring.
yeah, exactly. I just need a nap. I've done my AFL. I need a nap, and then I can focus on life stuff. But gotta keep it separate. It's like you have a lot of energy. Like I love supporting Port. Sometimes the frustration. I'm a very emotional person. I sometimes get a bit upset after a loss, but I never like taking that into the working week. So yeah, I don't know. I just did the game, got a bit upset. Not a
Yeah,
bit. You know what I mean? It's just disappointing.
it's just how it
Had a
is.
nice Sunday, nice Monday, and yeah, just looking to take the week as it comes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just more work. It's my best friend's birthday this weekend, so
Ooh,
I'll see if she wants to do something. I don't know how busy
yeah,
she's gonna be. But yeah, it's just gonna see the
yeah, no,
games, catch what we can. Hopefully there are some thrillers this weekend. Be something worthwhile to talk
exactly.
about.
Yeah. I will
Hope.
say I will be in a new location next week. House sitting for my auntie in Rockingham,
Oh yeah,
a bit down the coast of WA. So yeah, closer to where Fremantle actually is, in terms of location. So
I've been to
um,
Fremantle. It's a nice little area.
it is, it is. So looking forward to that. Got a lovely little King's uh Kingston Charles Cross or something. Uh,
Uh,
handsome old doggo.
nice doggo.
Lovely.
All right,
Yeah.
so
Uh, so yeah.
I think we'll wind it down for this week. Thank you all
Yep.
so much for coming to hang out with us. Thank you for watching us on the YouTube. Thank you for listening to us on the Spotify. Please be sure to check out socials down below for both of us and for the podcast. Again, I know we kind of only post weekly about when the podcast actually goes up on the socials, but I'm gonna try and be more active, especially especially on the weekends when the games are on. Just try and just talk more talk more trash about the teams. Maybe post some funny things that I spot. Who knows?
And
I'll try
like,
and do that on my own
there's a few
socials as
things that
well.
we didn't
Actually,
talk about, that we might just put in a small video. I might send Blaze stuff. I'm
yeah.
too old and incompetent to work social media.
If
Blaze
we
will
want to
sort it
go on a
out for
little bit
me.
of a rant on our own, we might put it up there on the
Yeah,
socials rather than here on the pod.
exactly. But
Um,
as I said, in terms of content, we just get pretty involved in the game. So like with all that covering, it's
oh,
just a lot to talk about everything. So,
and as you can
but we hope
see
the
above
content we do.
us,
Yeah.
we are now even on tips.
Are we?
Yeah, because you
Damn.
only got 4 this week and I got 5.
Yeah, you did to Richmond.
Yeah, I tip Richmond. Of
Yeah,
course I
you
tip
did.
Richmond.
You jerk.
So yeah, this week
Tipping
the
your own
the
team.
next
Happy
couple of
of
weeks are
you.
going to be really interesting to see how far on par we stay with each other.
I won last year. I do not care
Yeah, I know
anymore.
you won last year.
I got my one victory. I'm
I'm
retired.
just I just
I
more
don't
want
have
to
to
catch
think
up on my work
anymore.
comp because there's actually money involved in that
Yeah,
one.
true. True.
But yeah, we'll want to thank you all for coming to hang out with us this week. We will have a chat to you all throughout the weekend, hopefully, about these games and what excites us and any other stuff that we spot, etc., etc. And we will hopefully see you all next week for the recap for round 4 and
Gather around.
the
Yeah.
rundown of round 5. So see you all then. Have a lovely week, and we will see you all soon. Bye.